So this is the alarm system. So under the alarmable, I have a structure called the registration data, which holds the commands for each of the private callback, the alarm 0, the alarm 1, and the alarm 2, as well as the registration states for each one and the iterator reference. I have also the trigger alarm function to be private, as well as the registration and the alarm registration. Then on the protected side, I have the submit alarm registration function, which is user accessible, as well as the submit alarm the registration, which takes the alarm ID, and for the registration it takes the alarm ID and also the timer. Then in the alarmable attorney, the one that it gives access to the trigger alarm is the alarmable manager. And then for the registration, the callbacks are given to the commands, the registration and the registration command. And then the alarmable is using the registration state, so it prevents duplicate. Then the structure, it'll just iterate through the registration data array, and then delete the proper registration and the registration command, since the alarmable is the one who owns the commands. The reason I'm using an array is because we want the data to be contiguous, as well as it's easier to iterate for an array. And we also don't need a data structure that is dynamic. So we only have 3 alarms, so we can set up a fixed size. Then in the alarmable manager, I have an enum for the alarm ID. And for the data structure I'm using, I have a pair, which is the alarm event, to have a pointer of the alarmable as well as the alarm ID. So a pair would make sense, since we want each alarmable to be linked to each specific callback. And then I have a multi-map of floats and the alarm event. So the reason why I choose a multi-map is because we want sometimes the different alarms to be registered at the same time, as well as we want the alarms to be registered, to reset the registration, so a map will not allow to do that. I also have the process alarms to be private, which is accessible to the alarmable manager attorney, and it only gives access to the scene. So in the other public functions are the actual registration and the registration to the scene, using the reference iterator of the timeline, so that will allow for fast deletion, which is a constant time. So that's true for the register and the register. Then in the process alarm, it will just trigger the correct alarm when the time is right to trigger it through the time manager get time function. So the documentation looks like this. So I have highlighted 4 functions: the user submit registration and the registration, as well as the non-user friendly alarm registration and the registration function. And I have a more detailed description of the overall alarm system. So I have a code example of how to properly use the system, as well as some snip codes in some of the scenarios in which the submit alarm the registration will come handy, as well for the alarm registration. And this is the overall the alarm diagram system. It's not as overwhelming as the update and draw system. So let's start with the frigate. So the frigate will inherit from the game object, and the game object will inherit from the alarmable, and then the alarmable will have the pointer for each of the of the commands, which are holding in an array of the registration data, and then the commands will have a reference to the alarmable callback. Then the commands will be sent to the scene attorney, which will send them to the scene, and then the scene will send them to the registration broker, and then when it's time to execute the commands, they'll do the callback through the alarmable attorney to the alarm registration and the alarm deregistration. Then the alarm will do the actual registration of the scene. So it will call the scene attorney once again, and then the scene attorney will pass the alarmable instance to the alarmable manager. Then the alarmable manager will process the correct alarm, and then when the time is ready, when the alarm is ready to trigger, he'll call the alarm attorney, and then they call back the trigger alarm. Then the trigger alarm will just trigger the correct alarm callback. In this example, the only callbacks available are the alarm 0 and also alarm 1. And that's pretty much how the alarm system works.